Bernie Sanders laid down the smackdown as he was interviewed on CNN by Mr. Anderson Cooper, talking about the $3.5 trillion infrastructure package that they're trying to get passed. Take a look at this.
How will the final figure be decided? I mean, where
it's going to be $3.5 trillion. That's the compromise that's already been made. I think what we perceive right now, I mean, you should stick around me for a day. You hear all these folks coming up to me, oh, Bernie, I need to do more on childcare. We need to do more on pre-K. We need to do more on affordable housing. We need to do more. The truth is $3.5 trillion is not enough. And I will tell you this, that over the next 10 years, when you look at the gross domestic product of the United States, we're talking about close to $300 trillion over the next 10 years. This is $3.5 trillion, barely more than 1% of that. And furthermore, it is, if I have anything to say about it, this legislation, $3.5 trillion, will be paid for, will not add to the national debt, and it'll be paid for by finally demanding that the wealthiest people in this country, who in some years pay zero, they pay less than the average fireperson or teacher, pay zero in federal taxes. Large corporations pay nothing in federal taxes. We're going to change that. So it will be paid.
So $3.5 trillion for you. That's there. It can't go lower than that.
No. And in fact, as you know, we compromised already. Most of the members of the caucus wanted $6 trillion, which is a more appropriate number.
Senator Sanders, I appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. Inject every bit of that into my veins. That's what I like to see from the people that are supposed to be doing what we ask them to do. You know, the people that are nominally left, that are in Washington, Congress, and the Senate, they fail us so very often. I know I say so many times how they're weak, how they have no backbone, no spine, how they don't know how to fight. But man, oh man, better late than never. Here they are. You know, they're here. And it's not just Bernie Sanders. It's our fellow progressives in the House as well that are actually standing for something this time around. And it's absolutely amazing to see. So Bernie says there, and this is what I love, because I've been thinking, you know, about this human infrastructure bill, they call it, the $3.5 trillion bill. I've been watching a lot of different commentary on it, a lot of different opinions, and people say, oh, you know, they'll negotiate down, and if they can get around this number or this number, but no less than this, and I just think, like, well, where's the negotiation? The negotiation is the $3.5 trillion. That's the compromise. And that's what Bernie Sanders is saying. Now, I'm not saying that it'll be that in the end. I hope it will be. Who knows? It might get down to 3 trillion, 2.5. Who knows? But Bernie Sanders says staunchly, ardently, that 3.5 trillion is the compromise. I mean, he flat out says it. And I love this. And I hope they stand on this because, look, man, these so-called moderates, and we need to really get rid of that term moderate. People like Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema, whoever else doesn't want to vote for this legislation, they're not the moderates. Bernie Sanders is the moderate. Yeah, he is. You want to know why he is? Because what he's advocating for is basic fucking necessities. Basic necessities. Now, the things that I'm about to name aren't in this bill, but something like universal health care. Every other developed country has one form or another of a single payer system. That's a basic necessity. Healthcare is a basic necessity. You pay taxes as a citizen. They guarantee you typical things like healthcare. I mean, how is that radical? But they try to spin it and say, oh, he's the radical socialist, he's a communist Marxist. Oh, he wants these things that we just can't achieve as America. Absolutely insane. And he notes their housing prices. Housing prices have shot through the roof, guys. But guess what hasn't risen along with the housing prices? People's wages. People aren't making more money than they used to. People's wages aren't climbing with the price of living in this country. Simply living. Just trying to survive. They can't survive. It's difficult. It's extremely difficult. And a lot of people are hurting right now. And he points out how how much this bill costs is barely 1% of GDP over the next decade. I love how he points that out. He says that, and this is where it gets kind of iffy. He says that it's going to be paid for by taxing the people that need to be taxed now. There are minor tax elevations in this bill. They're going to raise the corporate tax rate, the marginal tax rate for the top bit of earners, and a few other like capital gains, a few other pieces in there as well. But my thing is, and Bernie probably knows this, and it isn't sufficient. It isn't what we need to. I mean, they're not adequately getting taxed even after this. So I'll give you an example. Donald Trump, with his 2017 tax cut bill, cut the corporate tax from 35% to 21%. In the reconciliation bill, this 3.5 trillion bill that Bernie Sanders is talking about, it proposes to raise it from 21% to 26%. Keep in mind, it was cut from 35%. Now, it may pay for this bill, but in the grand scheme of things, we want to raise that much higher. Much higher. We want to take it beyond what it previously was, that 35%. That's for damn sure. We need to tax these people, man. And they need to stand on this, man. It can't go lower than 3.5 trillion. That's what he said. And I hope he believes that in his heart of hearts. And I believe he does. They got to be willing to burn down the house, man. These quote unquote moderates who are actually the extremists always get what they want because they're willing to, figuratively speaking, of course, burn down the house and let it all go, let it all go to ash. That's what Bernie and the other elected lefties need to be able to do. Now, I'll end the video with this. Bernie pointed out at the end that 3.5 is insufficient, and he's correct. He's absolutely correct. And he points out how he and others that were allying with him originally wanted 6 trillion to upgrade the infrastructure. You might say, well, 6 trillion is a huge number. No, it's not actually. Did you know that the American Society of Civil Engineers said in 2017 that fixing our infrastructure, just adequately fixing it, not making it above and beyond the best infrastructure in the world, just adequately fixing it would cost $4.6 trillion. So in the grand scheme of things, 1 trillion, 2 trillion, even 3 trillion doesn't really stack up with how bad our infrastructure actually is. So that 6 trillion number that Bernie came in at was actually a pretty decent starting point. Also, the average family forks over $3,400 annually in extra expenses because of a failure to invest in infrastructure. Some systems, like parts of the power grid and drinking water networks, date back to the 19th century, leaving them vulnerable to natural disasters and even cyber attacks. I mean, we got roads and bridges and highways that are bad. People spend, on average, I think it's something like 42 hours a year in traffic. And that's just burning gas. And as a result, it burns money. And people lose money. And they don't have the money to really be replacing and purchasing things and what have you. So, look, man, better late than never. I'm glad they're showing some fight, because for so long they failed us. They failed us on the $15 minimum wage. They failed us on a plethora of things. The $2,000 checks that they promised that ended up being $1,400 checks. So many things they have reneged on. But look, man, we have to give them credit where it's due. I'm a firm believer in that, because I feel like if we do nothing but chastise them, we, as in the people, the voters, they will, I mean, I'm not saying they'll be anti-us, because they got to do what they sent there to do, but it gives them an incentive to do even more of this stuff. So if they get praised for standing in the way and getting this bill passed, then that'll give them even more confidence to do something like this in the future. And that's what we need.